Hey, dude.
How are you?
Good, good, good.
Good.
Yeah, everything's good. Um, just heard from the Huffington Post again today. Another editor picked up on another article that they'd like to run, so that was cool.
Awesome. Hey, bring it.
Yeah, yeah. So that's good. Things are hitting on there.
Yeah. So did you see David's epic post today?
No, Adrian Holova. I just had lunch with him, and he told me about it, and I hadn't checked it out yet. I haven't been on Signal versus
Yeah,
Razor,
read it.
or no, it was on Medium, I think, right?
Yeah. It's one of David's best. Like, David has his classic rants, and like this is one of his best. I mean, really, really good, very, very clear thinking, and like passionate, powerful arguments. And this is like definitely when he's in his best. So this is one for the ages for him. It's a good one.
Cool. That's awesome. Does he, is he, I haven't talked to him enough about this stuff. Like, does some of this stuff just kind of flow, or is this like a topic that's been on his mind a while that he's like edited a lot?
I asked him about that this morning because this topic, this thing he wrote was actually for a talk that he was giving at a conference in Dublin, which he had to cancel because the scheduling got messed up. And so he just wrote it up instead and posted it as an article. But he said he's been kind of taking notes over the last 4 months about like some of these topics and kind of put them together in a really tight, it's long, but like a really tight presentation. And really kind of hammered some core stuff home. So I think it'd make for a great talk as well, but it's really nice to read because it is long.
Yeah, I've enjoyed his talks too. He has a way of, he keeps drumming up new talks. Like I don't, the times I've seen him talk, like, it's like never the same thing. It's always something different. It's good.
Yep. So,
So yeah, what's going on there? Oh yeah, did you wanna? People have been writing in. You posted this, and we've got some good questions.
yep. Yeah. So I was going to talk. I asked people on Twitter what they would, some things they want to talk about. And one thing that came up, there's a bunch of really good suggestions. One thing that came up was Sophia Goncalves, maybe getting that wrong. She wanted to know about networking and being an introvert. I'm certainly an introvert. I think you are. What do you do about networking? Like, because networking is like, it gives me the chills when I even think about going to like an event just to meet people.
I don't like going to events.
Yeah, so I'm not an event guy, and I think actually that networking in general is sort of overrated as a thing that you're supposed to do, like as a thing that you have to do, that you have to get out there and network. It's just, I find people, you go to conferences and you see the same people there all the time, and I'm kind of curious about what they're doing, and they're like, I'm networking, I'm meeting. And I think if you're in sales, perhaps it's or business development, it's not even networking at that point. It's more like really like setting up a sale down the road, prospecting, which is very different from just general networking. Like, do you need to get out and just meet a bunch of people? And I don't think that you do. I think that you can actually, if you're introverted, I think meeting people online is a great way to do it. Striking up conversations with people through like mediums where you're comfortable speaking up and meeting people, whether it be Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or, even some like forums or whatnot, special interest forums, like that's enough. Don't feel like you have to get out there and get cold sweats just because it's something you're supposed to be doing. I think that there's opportunities, of course, to meet people and run into, have some sort of spontaneous, serendipitous encounters when you're networking. But if you're uncomfortable and don't feel good about even being there and you're nervous about it, like I wouldn't personally feel like that's something you need to put yourself through in order to meet people. What's your take on that, Nate?
I mean, it's the same. It's like I just wrote about this post. The thing that actually went crazy last week was about like Momofuku Ando, this guy who invented instant ramen noodles. And like, if you look at his life, like he's done all this stuff, and it's because he had a lot of friends, and a lot of friends kind of helped him in a lot of situations. And when I look back at my life, like I've been in a lot of situations where I don't think I'd be here today without like a lot of help and a lot of people I've met. Like I wouldn't be running High Rise unless like I had met you at an event. Like, well,
Right.
maybe that would have been, maybe we would have still met. We've actually emailed afterward and met different places, but like So I have, I guess, a couple different perspectives of this. One, I don't like networking. I don't do well like schmoozing, and I don't meet people when I go to these things. Usually, I'm like the first to leave, and I don't meet anyone. I don't really like introducing myself to complete strangers and trying to like start up a conversation. But with you, it was like, oh, we might have even emailed back and forth before that, so it was like not as hard, to go to something and actually kind of enforce a relationship that had already maybe been started. So like, like I don't really like networking, but if I can go to an event to see somebody I already know and to try and meet them a little bit more, well, that's good too. And that's like a positive thing for me. So like, I guess some of the things that have been useful for me is like going to events where I actually already know a couple people, where the relationships aren't maybe that strong, but I don't feel uncomfortable meeting them. So it's just like, well, that's something good. But I also think we keep doing stuff that we don't enjoy. If you don't enjoy networking, don't do it. I mean, you've tried to enforce this, and I think a lot of people, and myself too, is like, stop doing the things that you aren't good at and that you don't even want to do anyway. Keep doing and doing better the things you already like doing, and get stronger at the things you're already good at, and figure out the things that are working, and like double down on them. Stop trying to like, I don't know, we keep doing things that like go against our gut and go against our instincts, and it sucks. And I feel like that's, as soon as I start doing that, I'm doing the wrong thing. So it's like, as an introvert, you don't want to go to events, don't go to events. Like you said, like, do more stuff online, write more, try to meet more people on Reddit, help them out on forums and stuff.
Right.
I've also been meeting a lot of people that way.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is what, it's always good, I think, to ask yourself why you're doing something. I just put up a post on Medium today about maximization. About, some people feel like they need to maximize everything, maximize revenue, maximize profit, maximize like productivity time, maximize like, why? Maybe you do, but like, why are you going through the motions? Why are you trying to squeeze out every last drop? Like, do you have to do it? Are you fiduciarily do you have a fiduciary responsibility to do that? Do you just feel like you're supposed to? Like, why are you doing these things? And networking is one of those things. Like, do you feel like you just have to do it because that's where things happen? So anyway, we can go on that for a while, but I think that do what you're most comfortable with doing. There's plenty of ways to meet people without having to sort of go through the traditional routes of face-to-face and schmoozing and feeling uncomfortable. Go in a way that you're going to put your best foot forward. So if it's online, if it's in Reddit, or if it's, wherever, Hacker News, or wherever you're spending your time, or Dribbble, or whatever it is, just do it there and feel comfortable, and you'll meet plenty of the right people anyway that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're right. Like, I can go on forever. Like, if you want to meet people, like, go just help people. And it doesn't have to be like schmoozing. It could just be like offering services, volunteering, just being helpful to people is like the best way of meeting like new people. And it doesn't feel like one of these uncomfortable cocktail conversations where you don't know each other. There's like plenty of ways to like find to help people.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's kind of my feeling too. So yeah. I think that's a good question. I'm glad that someone brought that up, because it's not actually something I'd like to write about at some point. So let me just look back at Twitter here and see if there's a couple other things. Yeah, so something people have mentioned a bunch of times, and it continues to come up, which is balancing product development and client work if you're a small agency. Mm-hmm. Do you want to? I'm happy to talk about that, but is that any interest?
No, yeah, let's talk about it. It's probably more in your wheelhouse. Like, I feel like, I've never run my own client services firm. I've done some balance of it, but yeah, you're the one who started out as client services and then used the time to build a product. So yeah, go. Yeah, you refine it.
I think the way to approach that is to typically treat it as a client itself. So if you can handle doing, I don't know, 4 client projects at a time or something like that, do 3 real ones and do 1 client project, which is your side project, and treat it as a client project. Give it whatever fraction of the time that you give the other ones, or slice, or whatever, and see where it goes from there. And maybe it ends up being a great client. Maybe it ends up being your highest paying client. Maybe it ends up being your only client. Or maybe it ends up fizzling out and being a client that you did some work for 6 months, and then you decided to part ways. And that eliminates all the risk. Because I think the thing is that entrepreneurs, there's this myth around risk that those who take the biggest risks are the ones who are going to succeed, and risk. And, you know, if you want to make it big, you got to mortgage your house and put it all on the line and, you know, forfeit all your savings and whatever. Like, I just don't buy that. I think that great business people mitigate risk and eliminate as much risk as possible, try to make more calculated bets. You can still make big bets, but like, I mean, and there are cases, of course, you can find them where people threw it all on the line and it worked, right? But it's pretty risky, and you got to think about what's it worth to you to lose that. If you don't make it, what's it worth? So I've always been a fan of reducing risk by treating everything as a fractional commitment to start, and then seeing which fraction ends up being the biggest fraction, then focus on that. So for us, when we built Basecamp was a side project. We were able to spend 10, 15 hours a week on it. We had client work. And then after we launched it, about a year later, it was our biggest client. And it was big enough that we did the math. We said, you know, we can support ourselves on this client alone. Let's do that. And so we stopped doing other client work and then focus on Basecamp full time. And I just continue to feel like that is the best way to do it. It also helps you not force the issue. I think there's a lot of agencies out there who aren't thrilled with doing client work. And so they try and force themselves into making a product. And it's hard to make a product that's a hit, that's enough to support people. And so, you know, don't force yourself into that corner. I've always felt like it's good not to like force yourself into corners in that way. Like, you know, just make sure there's space around you to make different decisions if you have to.
Yeah. Jim Koodle, I think, has a very similar take on this. I mean, I think they did the same thing, right? Like, I mean, they were doing client services projects, and then they just basically treated themselves as their own client, and basically started giving them some time to market the stuff that they wanted to make. And I think a lot of people come at this and they worry that, like, I think a lot of the worry, and I know I've felt this too in the past, when a lot of people talk about this balance between client services and starting your own products, they worry that by doing client services projects, they're not giving enough attention to the product, and they're worried they're missing out, or they're worried that some competitors are going to come in and steal their piece of the pie. You know, and I think it's a false worry usually. I mean, you know, there's very few situations. They're in the news, these you know, Uber and Lyft fighting or something, and maybe Uber came first and now Lyft is a follower. But it's so rare that that's actually the case, where like the person in front has like all the money, and look, Lyft is still competing. But so my point is, I guess, like, I think a lot of people worry that they can't still do client services because, like, they're worried that if they take some time off and they don't work full time, they don't work like super insane hours on the software product, it's going to take a lot longer.
Right.
And I think they're worried about too much. Like, doing Inkling, you know, we had to take some breaks to pay bills. I mean, Inkling wasn't making enough money to like support us well enough. So, I mean, we figured out, my business partner was able to kind of find some gigs that we were able to kind of, you know, he was able to do some consulting. We were able to do some, sell the software. It's kind of like a consulting package thing where we sold the software and someone else got to use it. I did it with Draft too. A buddy of mine hired me to do a few days of consulting on like performance optimization. It feels distracting, you know, like I'd love it if I could just work on the product all the time, but it's not like it doesn't make that much of a difference. Like, there's going to be, like with Draft, there's going to be more writing software in the future. Like, hopefully my product stands out good enough that I don't have to, like, you know, get it out today or even the next 6 months. Like, it can be something, it takes a while, because hopefully it's good enough it can stand on its own.
Yep. Yeah, I get that. I think I'm just trying to think about if there's anything more to add to that. But anyway, I think those are the lessons, really. And but fundamentally, back to the point to me, which is just watch your risk. Watch your risk, because you can take on too much, and then you get stuck, then you get frozen, and then you end up in a bad spot where you start making tough decisions, and you didn't have to put yourself in that situation.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. All right. Let's see here. Looking at some of the topics here. Well, here's one that's sort of. I feel like we've kind of touched on that. I'm going to pass on that one. Anything other topics you're seeing in there, Nathan, that you want?
I don't know. The question of like competing inputs, like tech debt versus new features, is a.
Oh yeah.
It's an interesting one. It is a challenge. I mean, I think we all go through this challenge. Like, is this worth? I mean, it's not even just always quite like that stated like that, but is it worth? Is it worth doing something fast, or is it worth investing more time to like make it more robust or something? Like we have this going on now, right? Like high rise is a lot of legacy stuff, and we also want to move fast and get a lot of new stuff done. And I don't know. It is a balance, and it's a constant negotiation. And we have talked about, it's a constant negotiation. Like, well, can we get a quick version of this thing out today, or do we have to kind of pay down something to figure out how to do it better? And sometimes it falls on both sides. Like sometimes we usually try to do. You and I have talked about this on the show before about doing kind of like science projects. Sometimes you don't even know. Like sometimes we have to kind of like, well, let's try and do an easy version of this first to see if it's doable. We did an easy version at High Rise. We now have something called Good Morning. It's a group inbox. We did kind of an easy version that does like polling. And we polling is, web polling. Like it's every few seconds it's asking the server for some more information. And we kept adding some more stuff onto it. And after a while of this project of doing this internally, we were like, you know what? We have to kind of go back to the beginning and redo this because it's becoming a performance nightmare. And sometimes it just takes, like, you got to take a stab at it and then rejigger once you find out if that was okay, or if you do have to kind of go back. I don't know. I don't have a perfect answer for it, except for sometimes I usually try the easy way first to see where it gets us. You can usually kind of do, like you've talked about, like a little science experiment for a few days to see where it goes before deciding, like, okay, we've got to like take on a much bigger project to make this a true reality.
Yeah, I think there's also the timing that plays a part in it. So, excuse me, I'm still not over this throat thing. That, fixing bugs and paying off technical debt is important at different times. So like right now, we just launched Basecamp 3 officially yesterday, and we've got some debt to pay off first before we, make some new investments. Let's call it that way if we're playing the financial, metaphor there. So we're gonna, let the dust settle, pay off some debt, fix some stuff up. We've got some weirdness around login that we need to fix. We've got some couple of performance issues. We want to speed up some stuff. Every time you sign up for Basecamp now, you're given a sample Basecamp you can play around with. So we have like a sample example of how you can use Basecamp. It's like how we manage our podcast, not the one you and I are doing, but this one called The Distance. And we're going to have dozens and dozens of examples down the road. And right now they take too long to spin up and create. So we have to like figure out how to speed that up. And so there's some core stuff we want to do. But we don't want to pay off technical debt forever, because it's okay to carry some debt, but some key debt initially you want to pay off, and then probably in a week or two we'll start making some more investments in some of the newer stuff. So it's not always a permanent ratio. We also have different levels of some debt you can pay off really quickly. Like if you imagine having a $20 bill on your desk and there's some 50-cent debt you can pay off really quick, just pay it off. Some stuff might be, again, I'm taking this metaphor too far, but it might be like hundreds or thousands of dollars, and you're like, I don't have that kind of cash right now. Let's wait for a little bit until we have some more breathing room. So it kind of all depends on all that kind of stuff too. I also think it's important to pay off. When you pay off technical debt, you want to solve root cause things as best you can. So you're not paying off, like you're not taking on, how can I put it? You're not just paying the interest. You want to pay down some of the principal as well. That's, I think, a really important part. That if you're just plugging holes or if you're just putting band-aids on things, you're not really paying off, you're not curing anything. And so you want to pay off some of the principal as well.
And I also think, like, I'm a big fan of this concept. I've written about this before too, about like using, like, I go back to this analogy of like my father. Like my father has always been a very handy guy. He built so much of stuff in my life, like parts of the house, you know, porches, very handy dude, had all these tools. Like I remember helping him so much, like, hey, we're building a fence around our entire yard and he's going to just do it all himself. And like, I just always remember like he had this tool room in our basement. And what was just so interesting when I look back about it is like how old his tools were. You know, like he had old stuff that my like grandfather used to have, like, you know, saws and hammers and screwdrivers. And like what's interesting is like this stuff is old and it's not shiny, but it still works. And so sometimes I feel like a lot of people look at some of these old tools and they like declare like that's technical debt. Really? I mean, it still works. You could still figure out how to use it. It may not be freshly like improved, but does it still get the job done? Like I didn't, as soon as I started High Rise, we didn't just like throw out the whole thing. Like a lot of the JavaScript right now has been running with something called Prototype, which was an old library Sam Stevenson at Basecamp created many years ago. Today, the new hotness is jQuery, and you guys I know have moved on from Prototype stuff to jQuery, but we have still been using Prototype. But it's not like this thing I had to throw out immediately. Like it worked fine. There's plenty of documents on it. I can make it do its thing. We're starting to migrate it out of the system now, but I think too many people are like just really quickly jump on the bandwagon of like throw out all the old stuff because it's old, but it still works. Use the old tools that you're familiar with. You'll find actually a lot of the old stuff you can move faster with because it's been tried. You already know how to use it. You know, stop being so attracted to like the shiny new things. They take longer and they're probably broken.
Right. It's not. Yeah, that's actually a really good fundamental thing to ask, which is what exactly is the debt? Is it? Are you running an old version of something? Like, are you considering that debt? Well, if it's not really impacting anything, then it's not debt. You know, if it runs and it's fine and it's not slowing you down, there's no security vulnerabilities, and if it works, it works. It's fine, right? At some point, yeah, maybe you do want to just refresh it because things have a life cycle at some point, and it's time to put some new tech in place for whatever reason. But that alone is not debt. Like staying up on the latest versions of everything is not necessarily debt.
Yeah.
I
think you have to have that really honest conversation. Like, is this thing slowing you down, or is it just because you're attracted to the new thing?
Right. Yep. So I agree with that. I think that's like defining that first actually is really what's important, because it's not like sometimes I think people think that debt is anything that's on the list. Like, and like upgrading to this or that might be on your list, but it doesn't make it debt. It's just like, in that case, it's like an option. Do I want to go in this direction or not? Like maybe, do we need to? Not yet. Maybe there's some advantage, but really I'm more into like getting to the core root of these things so you solve problems. If you're going to put work in on something, to put work in on something and not to solve the core problem means you have to keep putting more work into that thing. And you're better off like putting the work into solving the core root problem first, and then you save yourself a lot of work down the road. You can apply that work to other things. So you actually make more progress that way. It might be harder initially, but you make a lot more progress.
Totally. There's this actually, I wanted to actually say something about what we talked about yesterday, which I think is fits in here, which is like we so quickly label things as debt. Or you and I were talking yesterday about like naming a feature. You know, like people keep asking us in High Rise about pipelines, and it's really easy to like think in your head like you know what that means. There's a really great Richard Feynman, the physicist. I've been reading his biography. And like I've watched a lot of his videos. You can watch a lot of his videos and his talks online, and I'll share one in the show notes with the comments of this thing. But like he has this really great thing that he did with his father. His father was taking him out in the woods or the forest, and I guess a lot of kids and their fathers did this in Manhattan or Brooklyn where he was growing up. And maybe it was just Central Park or something, but it was like they would go through and check out the trees and stuff. And like one day, a friend of his started giving him a hard time. He was asking him like, hey, do you know the name of that bird? And Richard Feynman was like, no, I don't. And his friend, I mean, they were kids. The friend is like, your dad hasn't taught you anything. You know, you're an idiot. And Feynman came back and was like, no, actually, he has taught me the name of the bird. It's a whatever Scottish warbler, and he taught me the Japanese version of it, and the German word, and the whatever the Spanish word for this bird. But knowing the name of this bird doesn't tell me anything about this bird. Like, it's still completely, I know the name and it means nothing to me. I don't know anything about what makes this bird a bird. And it was just this very neat analogy of like, we can know the name. Hey, we're talking about pipelines. We don't know what the fuck we're talking about when someone says, I want a pipeline. There's no understanding there. Or like we're talking about like technical debt. Like you can say the word, but it doesn't really mean anything until we like really start asking questions about it.
I think I love that video, by the way. That's one of my favorite videos that he did. I mean, that whole series of videos is just awesome. Actually, it's more from a documentary, and someone split them up into pieces, I think, but they're fantastic. I highly recommend everyone seek those out on YouTube. But yeah, so anyway, I'm on board with that.
Anything else?
I think we're about done. We should probably call it.
Cool.
We're almost now. Yeah, cool. All right. Well, hey, everybody, thanks again. It's great to get some of these questions and address some of those things for people. And please subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want more of these videos, and if you want Google or YouTube to tell you when there's new video waiting. I believe it kind of does that, sort of, although it seems to like get wrapped up every week or something. So I actually don't really know how subscriptions work, to be honest. But I got
every now and then I get an email from Gary Vaynerchuk's subscription or something that I have. Yeah. So it's like there's an email sometimes that goes out. Sometimes there's a little notification in your Google account.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm not really sure. But anyway, do it anyway, because you'll find out about it. You'll be more likely to find out about new shows and things we're working on that way. So please subscribe, and we'll be back tomorrow.
Cool. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.